Camille had just placed the final rose on the table when her phone buzzed. She smiled, thinking it was her florist or maybe a last-minute message from her maid of honor. But when she glanced down and saw the subject line, "Revised Reporting Structure, Immediate Effect," her hands went cold. She opened the email. And just like that, between the soft music and the clinking of champagne glasses, her world shifted. Effective today, she was being transitioned out of her leadership role. No explanation, no warning, just a signature from Mason Riker, the man she once mentored. Across the room, the DJ called her name. Guests waited, and in the corner sat the empty chair she'd saved for her father who passed away last spring. The one person who would have told her, they don't get to decide your worth. But they had tried, and they chose the one day she was supposed to feel untouchable. She stood there in full wedding dress, heart racing, betrayal sinking in, trying to smile while her chest burned. Why now? Why this day? Before we dive into what happened next, where in the world are you watching from? And more importantly, have you ever been blindsided by someone you trusted? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it today. Long before the wedding, long before the email that shattered it, Camille Hart had already poured a decade into Cinemax. Not as someone who chased titles or craved applause, but as the woman who kept the machine running quietly, relentlessly, without ever needing to be told good job. She wasn't flashy. Her blazers were neutral tones, her heels practical. The kind of leader who remembered assistants' birthdays and corrected legal footnotes before anyone else even read them. She didn't carry a resume. She was the resume. In her first year, she closed a distribution deal that saved the company during a funding drought. By year 3, she'd architected a client onboarding system that halved churn and tripled satisfaction scores. She spoke fluent spreadsheet and strategy deck, never raised her voice, never missed a deadline. Camille didn't just do the work. She was the blueprint, the reason others knew what the work looked like. People came to her with fires and left with solutions. More than once, she'd saved a major contract with a single phone call, a late-night spreadsheet, or a line in a presentation no one else had thought to include. And she never bragged. She just filed it away under what needed to be done. But lately, things had started to shift. The meetings she used to lead, she was now simply invited to. Ideas she'd championed were suddenly credited to newer voices. And the once steady stream of "we need Camille" had turned into awkward silences and CCs that excluded her name. Still, she told herself it was just growing pains. New leadership, new directions. It happens. She stayed late, she smiled, she supported, because loyalty to Camille wasn't a slogan, it was a practice. Until the day she realized loyalty wasn't being returned. And that realization, it started with a voice message she wasn't meant to hear, but we'll get to that soon. His name was Mason Riker. 35, smooth-talking, MBA, shiny, with just enough confidence to make you wonder whether he'd earned it or bought it. He walked into Cinemax like a man arriving at a party thrown in his honor, despite the fact that the company had been built long before his name ever appeared on a single email thread. Camille had met him years ago when he was still a junior associate from the East Coast satellite office. She remembered him as eager, sharp, in some ways sloppy in others. He asked a lot of questions, took a lot of notes, and always smiled a bit too much when others were being corrected. Now he was back, not as a visitor, not as a mentee, as CEO. He made his debut at the monthly leadership town hall, crisp suit, no tie, sleeves slightly rolled, like he wanted to seem relatable. He joked about synergy and disruption, tossed out buzzwords like confetti. A few chuckled. Most didn't. Camille watched from her usual spot in the second row, still as glass. Then came the slide, realigning leadership for strategic agility. No warning, no eye contact, just a bright chart with arrows, boxes, and somehow her name moved from executive director to strategic transition advisor. It wasn't even bolded. Mason didn't look at her when he read it. He smiled at the room instead, like a magician revealing a rabbit no one asked for. And when the meeting ended, Camille didn't say a word. She just stood, collected her notepad, and walked out like she was late for something that hadn't been scheduled yet. But she wasn't angry. Not yet. Because the thing about smiling men in tailored suits is they never see the storm coming. And Camille? She'd already felt the wind shift. Camille sat alone in her apartment that night, still in the soft silk of her wedding dress, now draped over a chair like a memory that didn't land right. The city lights outside her window blinked like indifferent eyes, people moving on unaware. She poured herself a glass of water, not wine, not bourbon, just water. Her mind wasn't clouded, it was sharp. She didn't cry. Camille didn't do chaos, she did clarity, and in that clarity, she remembered something. Something no one else in that boardroom had mentioned because no one thought she would. Clause 19.2. It was tucked into her original executive contract, drafted nearly a decade ago, back when Cinemax was still in a cramped co-working space, and Camille had been the only person who read every line of a deal, not just the bolded ones. She had insisted on it back when no one took her seriously enough to object. The clause stated that in the event of leadership reassignment without due notice, any strategic accounts Camille had originated or architected would remain within her consulting rights, free of non-compete restrictions. At the time, it had sounded theoretical, something a young woman asked for just to feel like she had leverage. But she hadn't asked for leverage. She had built her own. And now with Mason grinning his way through keynotes and reshuffling org charts like cards, Camille had something he didn't foresee. She pulled the original PDF from an encrypted folder on her external drive. There it was, highlighted, annotated, quiet, undeniable. She smiled not out of spite, but the kind of smile you give when you find exactly what you need right where you left it. She opened a blank email, typed only one sentence in the subject line, Ref Clause 19.2. Then she hit save. Not send, not yet, because before you use a weapon, you make sure the target's close enough. The following Monday, Camille arrived at the Cinemax office at 7:18 a.m. sharp, just as she had for the past 9 years. She nodded at the security guard, tapped her badge at the turnstile, and walked straight to her office without a word. Everything looked the same. The ficus in the corner, the framed client award, the sticky note on her monitor that read, "Make it make sense." But inside, something fundamental had shifted. She didn't bring breakfast, she didn't open Slack, she didn't even turn on her desk lamp. Instead, she pulled out a small leather folder she kept in her bottom drawer, the one labeled, "In case they forgot who I am." Inside was a copy of her resignation letter. No body text, no explanation, just the subject line, "Resignation, effective immediately." Attached was a single-page PDF referencing Clause 19.2. That was it. No flourish, no farewell speech, just a line of contract law that would be more deafening than any shout in the break room. She reread it once, then again, and just before logging off for the final time, she updated her out-of-office reply. It didn't say where she was going. It didn't thank anyone for an incredible journey. It simply read, "Camille Hart is no longer with Cinemax. Please redirect inquiries to executive leadership." She shut her laptop, placed her access badge neatly on her desk, and walked out the same way she came in, without a sound. No exit interview, no group chat messages, no goodbyes. Just a silence so complete, it would take the company days to realize what had actually happened. By the time they noticed, Camille was already building something they couldn't track. The first domino fell at 9:04 a.m. An urgent email from Norwood and Avery Cinemax's second-largest client landed in Mason Reichert's inbox. Subject: Request to postpone Q4 renewal discussion. Body: Due to internal restructuring on our end, we'd like to delay strategic meetings until further notice. It sounded polite, vague, but Camille had worked with them long enough to know they didn't postpone anything unless they smelled instability. By 10:12 a.m., Ilara Logistics, another Cornerstone account, emailed the partnerships team to pause invoicing on 2 active projects. People started whispering in the break room. Finance noticed gaps in forecasting sheets. Marketing froze an outbound campaign that was supposed to launch that morning. Mason, of course, tried to play it cool. He cracked a joke in the all-hands meeting about Q4 jitters and blamed the delays on global market fatigue. But no one was laughing. The office felt off. And it wasn't just the clients. Camille's empty desk sat untouched. Her nameplate still gleamed under the fluorescent light like a quiet accusation. Her team, the ones she'd trained, mentored, covered for, looked around for leadership. They got slide decks instead. Later that afternoon, a junior strategist named Layla, who had once called Camille the reason I didn't quit, drafted an email to her personal account. It only said, "I don't know what happened, but if you ever need support, I'm here." That night, Mason stayed late. Alone in his corner office, he stared at his calendar. Meetings canceled, contacts going cold. Somewhere, something had cracked, but it hadn't shattered yet. And the question hanging over his head, heavy as stone, was this: how many dominoes were left to fall? He'd get his answer sooner than he wanted. The apartment was quiet that Tuesday morning. No alarms, no meetings, no Slack notifications. Just the soft hum of the coffee maker and the steady rhythm of Camille's breath as she looked out over the Chicago skyline. She was still, but not idle. Her laptop was open. A clean tab on her browser blinked with the words, "Register New Business, Illinois Secretary of State." She typed the name slowly, like signing a promise. Heartline Strategies. No flourish, no LLC with a trendy hyphen. Just a name she had written in the margin of a notebook 5 years ago. Back when she first realized that one day she might need a plan B. That day had arrived. She uploaded her EIN, selected the business type, chose a bank, then clicked Submit. Just like that, it existed. Not in a corner office or a glass tower downtown, not with a neon sign or a branded tote bag, but in a 1-bedroom apartment on the 18th floor, lit by morning light and sheer will. The website came next. 3 pages, clean, sharp, no corporate jargon, no fake testimonials. Just a homepage that read, "We don't chase noise. We build signal." Underneath, founder Camille Hart. No photo, no mission statement, just the truth. She stared at the screen for a moment, then opened her inbox and began drafting 4 emails. Not pitches, not proposals, just a sentence each. Let me know if you need clarity. C. Each sent to a former client, a decision maker, someone who remembered how it felt to work with her, not around her. Then she closed the laptop, took a sip of coffee. Outside, the world moved as usual, but inside that apartment, something new had started breathing. And far across town in a boardroom, Camille once sat, in a different kind of silence was beginning to spread. It started small. An email from Eli Tran at Norwood and Avery. Short, direct. Got your note? Let's talk Thursday. Need signal, not noise. Then a voicemail from Jasmine Bell at Ilara Logistics. Hey Camille, if you're working independently now, I'd love to run something past you. No headlines, no LinkedIn announcements, just whispers. Whispers that traveled through executive circles, procurement Slack channels, quiet dinners over scotch and strategy. Because people remembered. They remembered how Camille cut through red tape when no one else could. How she once saved a contract in the 11th hour without ever raising her voice. They remembered that when chaos hit, Camille didn't flinch. She planned, she pivoted, she performed, and now she wasn't tied to Cinemax. That made her dangerous and available. Within a week, Camille's inbox was filling with soft pings, not from spam or recruiters, but from decision makers, real ones. Each message different in tone, but all carrying the same undercurrent. We know what you're capable of, and we're tired of pretending we don't. Camille kept track of it all in a spreadsheet titled Outreach, Phase 1, columns for contact, trust level, dissatisfaction indexed, probability of conversion. By Friday, 3 names were marked in green, Likely to switch? Trust high. Reason, Camille. She didn't reply to everyone, not yet. Timing mattered. But she felt it, the pull shifting back in her favor. And while Cinemax scrambled to plug holes in a leaky pipeline, Camille wasn't chasing anything. She was letting gravity do its job. Because sometimes the best strategy isn't noise, it's absence. And the right people, they always notice when someone like Camille disappears. One of those people was about to pick up the phone, and when they did, they weren't calling Mason. From the outside, Cinemax still looked polished. Floor-to-ceiling windows, chrome finishes, the kind of office space that photographed well on a company website. But from the inside, the cracks were starting to show. It began with missed follow-ups, calls not returned, clients asking odd questions like, is Camille still involved? And who's leading strategy now? And then came the cancellations. Not angry, just silent. A quiet retreat, one by one. Mason paced inside the glass-walled conference room, tapping his fingers against a tablet that had more red flags than tasks. His smile, that trademark smirk he wore like armor, was nowhere to be found. The finance team had flagged 3 accounts in jeopardy. Legal was combing through old contracts, trying to understand if Camille had violated anything. She hadn't. Clause 19.2 is airtight, one of the senior counsels finally admitted. She's clean. Mason didn't respond. He just stared at Camille's old office, now dark, untouched like a shrine no one wanted to admit still mattered. He tried damage control. He sent a vague message to clients, promising a renewed focus on strategic alignment. He even drafted an email to Camille, short, tentative corporate. Hope you're well. Would love to explore ways we might collaborate in a new capacity. She didn't reply. But later that day, a message popped into Mason's inbox from Celia Vance, VP at Orion Systems, one of Cinemax's oldest clients. We'd like to retain Camille Hart as a third-party advisor for continuity. Please coordinate accordingly. No. Please reconsider. No, can we discuss? Just a decision. Already made. Mason stared at the screen. The reflection of his own face ghosted over the subject line. And for the first time, he realized Camille hadn't left the game. She'd just changed the rules. And the next rule was about to land in the boardroom. It came in the form of a carefully worded email from HR. The kind written with thesaurus tabs open and legal watching over the sender's shoulder. Subject, exploring strategic opportunities, confidential, body A. A few flattering lines about Camille's invaluable legacy and continued influence. Then the pitch. A temporary advisory role, 3 months, flexible terms, direct line to the board. They even offered a generous hourly rate and full creative autonomy. It looked impressive. On paper. But Camille read it the way she read contracts between the lines. There was no mention of respect, no real ownership, no apology, just a desperate attempt to patch a sinking ship with duct tape and charm. She didn't reply. Instead, she forwarded the message to her attorney with a single word, declined. No exclamation, no follow-up, just clarity. Later that evening, while slicing apples in her kitchen, her phone buzzed again. A message from Rita, a friend still working deep inside Cinemax operations. They're scrambling. Leadership's in panic mode. I think they thought you'd say yes. Camille smiled softly, then typed back, They don't understand. I didn't leave to prove a point. I left to build something better. Because to her, the offer wasn't flattering. It was insulting. They wanted her brilliance back, just not her boundaries. And Camille had spent too many years shrinking herself to fit someone else's vision. This time, she was building her own. The next morning, a new email appeared. This one wasn't from HR. It wasn't carefully scripted. It came directly from Kenneth Boyd Cinemax, a chairman, a man who once told Camille she lacked boardroom presence. Now, he wanted a face-to-face, neutral ground, private meeting, no agenda attached. Camille read it once, then again. And this time, she didn't say no. Camille arrived at the Belmont Executive Center 5 minutes early. No entourage, no laptop, just a slim black folder tucked neatly under her arm, and the kind of calm that doesn't come from confidence, but from knowing you've already won. The lobby smelled like lemon polish and quiet desperation. She took the elevator alone. No music, just the soft mechanical hum and the steady rhythm of her breath. On the 24th floor, Kenneth Boyd was already waiting. Dark suit, silver cufflinks, posture just stiff enough to suggest nerves. He stood when she entered, reached for a handshake. Camille didn't offer one. She simply sat. "Camille," he began, voice warm and rehearsed, "I've been meaning to say you were always more valuable than we gave you credit for." She said nothing. He continued, "We fumbled, clearly, but I think there's still a future together. The board's open to reimagining things, a leadership-level role, full visibility. You'd come back as a peer, not a subordinate." Camille tilted her head just slightly, the way one might when inspecting a crack in a glass they hadn't noticed before. "We could have done better," Kenneth added. "You and I, we always made a strong team." She opened the folder, slid 3 documents across the table. Contracts, signed, sealed, from 3 of Cinermax's largest former clients. Kenneth scanned them in silence. His jaw tensed. His pen stopped tapping. Camille leaned in, not angry, not smug, just precise. Clause 19.2 wasn't a threat, Kenneth. It was a lifeline. You didn't just overlook it. You laughed at it. She stood to leave. "I didn't burn the ship," she said quietly. "I just walked away and took the map with me." Her phone buzzed as she stepped into the elevator. New client, new contract, new world, and one more page still left to turn. Weeks passed. Heartline Strategies grew, not loudly, not publicly, but steadily. 1 client became 3. 3 became 7. Camille no longer took every call. She chose the ones that aligned. She worked from a sunlit desk by her kitchen window, took long walks in the middle of the day, read contracts slowly with the kind of attention that once got buried under status meetings and empty praise. Cinermax, on the other hand, rebranded. Again, new logo, new leadership titles, new webinar series that barely masked the churn beneath the surface. Mason eventually stepped down to pursue personal projects. HR called it a pivot. Those who stayed behind stayed quieter. As for Camille, she didn't frame her wins, didn't throw a launch party. But one morning, she received a short handwritten note from a former intern. "You showed me that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy." She smiled, folded it, and tucked it between the pages of her old notebook, the one where she'd first written the words Heartline Strategies. Because this wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about value, about leaving when you've been erased and building something no one can take away. Victory didn't look like applause or headlines. It looked like clarity, like boundaries, like knowing your worth without needing someone else to confirm it. And sometimes it looked like not replying to that last email, because peace, too, is a power. So if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or quietly pushed aside, what would your version of victory look like? Let me know in the comments. Your story might help someone else find their way forward.